You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
329 players were invited to the NFL Combine. It runs from February 24th to March 3rd. There are 5 players from Syracuse in 2024 that received an invitation. You got Kyle McCord, Oronde Gadsden, LeQuint Allen, Fadil Diggs, and Alijah Clark. And I have many thoughts on this. Number one, this is outstanding for recruiting. There are 3 key ingredients in recruiting. Number one is relationships. It doesn't matter how many players you send to the pros. It doesn't really matter how much NIL money you might throw at a player. If there is no relationship in place, if there is no built-in trust that is there, 99.9% of the time, you are not going to get the player if you do not have a relationship. We have had Brian Smith on, Locked On recruiting expert, many times on this podcast, and he will always tell us relationships are the number one key when it comes to recruiting. Number 2, and we cannot ignore the obvious, is NIL. Now, it doesn't mean that recruits are always going to seek the top bidder, the highest amount of money. That doesn't mean that, but it certainly can't hurt to have the high bid on a player. And also, most of the time, if you want to get a player from high school, you're going to have to be in the ballpark most of the time. Sometimes there are exceptions to every rule. But I gave you all the job analogy before, but I'll give you all again briefly. Imagine if I gave you 3 job opportunities. They're all pretty similar. One is offering $100K, one is offering $95K a year, and the third one is offering $50K. You're not going to the place that's only offering $50K. Makes no sense. That's not in the ballpark. So with NIL, you might not necessarily have to have the high bid, but you definitely have to be in the ballpark. That leads to number 3, sending players to the pros. That's really, really important with recruiting because high school players, they'll look at a program and say, hey, can this program develop me and get me to the next level? So it's very important to send players to the pros. And it's one of the big reasons why a player may leave more money on the table to go to a certain school versus another school. Because, hey, they might look at this one school and say, hey, yeah, you're offering me more money right now, but what's the long-term play here? You don't send players to the NFL. This school does. So I would rather go there. So my number one takeaway is sending 5 players to the Combine is terrific for Syracuse football, and it should help recruiting. It's actually the most that Syracuse has sent to the Combine since 2019. Now it's all about, are they going to get drafted? And when are they going to get drafted? Because that's really what matters at the end of the day. But going to the Combine definitely increases your odds of being drafted. According to sportspedia.com, roughly 2/3 of Combine players ultimately get drafted. So there were 329 that were invited to the Combine. So if we're doing 2/3 of that, I'll just do the math for you all real quick. That's roughly 219 of the 329 that are going to be drafted. So hopefully, all 5 of Syracuse's players are in that 219. The second takeaway I have from this is the biggest omission is Jackson Meeks. I don't know where he is. I don't know why he was not invited to the Combine. The other omissions were Savion Washington, Marlo Wax, and Justin Barrett. And I understood those guys not really being invited. I get it. It's hard to be invited to the NFL Combine. But Jackson Meeks, I don't get. He took a massive step forward. He had over 1,000 yards. He was second team all ACC. But beyond the production, because at the end of the day, as I've told you all before, traits matter a lot more than production in the eyes of NFL talent evaluators. So let's talk about the traits of Jackson Meeks. I think he possesses a good amount of them for a potential NFL wide receiver. I'm not sitting here trying to argue that he should go first, second, or third round, but you're telling me he shouldn't be invited to a Combine? Really? I think he's a strong route runner. I think he's got good hands. I think seeing him progress the way he did over the course of the season, he's only getting better, should certainly help. I'm surprised that Jackson Meeks was not invited to the combine. But that's just me. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And the third takeaway, and I alluded to this in the first one with the recruiting, is now we wait. The NFL draft, it runs from April 24th to April 26th. April 24th is round 1. April 25th is rounds 2 and 3. April 26th is rounds 4 through 7. Who's going to have a good combine? Who is going to get drafted? When are they going to get drafted? Who is going to draft them? I'm sure many of you all who are watching or listening to this podcast have a favorite NFL team. Do you want to see your favorite NFL team pick one of these Syracuse players? There's actually, I'm a Jets fan, by the way. There's a lot of Jets fans talking about McCord as a potential mid-round quarterback. Just saying. Hey, it's worth a shot. I mean, the New York Jets stink. I actually really don't wish it on McCord to go to the Jets, but that's just me. But yeah, now we wait. And we have to hope that many Syracuse players ultimately get drafted, because it can only help your program.